Hi, everybody, and welcome to Root Health's article review of the day. And not that we do one every day, but this is the one for today. Anyways, this one is from the American College of Sports Medicine website, and it is an article titled, "Can 4-second cycle sprints counteract some effects of inactivity?" It is written by a gentleman named Ed Coyle. Um, let's see, and let's see. He has a PhD from the University of Arizona, and he completed his postdoctoral at the Washington University School of Medicine. And he has been a professor and the director of the Human Performance Laboratory at the University of Texas at Austin for 38 years. Pretty good resume. All right, so let's go ahead and look through this article. Let's see, starts off the article. The introduction is modernization over the past few decades has progressively engineered the demand to be physically active out of our lives. We have little to no physical activity, and inactivity is more than simply the lack of exercise, but inactivity is characterized by daily sitting time. So not only is it just physical activity being non-exertive, but actually sitting and doing very little. And what problems with biomechanics do we have that occur and might be changed by the experiment that he does here. It says, our study, second section, is published in the October 2020 issue of Medicine and Science and Sports and Exercise. And it describes a new approach my laboratory has taken with the lead of Anthony Wolf to maintain physical activity and exercise through an 8-hour period of prolonged sitting in young adults. It is unique in that it is based on performing a few 4-second sprints using an inertial load cycle ergometer every hour. These sprints have the major health benefit of increasing fat oxidation and lowering, let's just say fat oxidation. And so what I want to just point out here, this is what he's suggesting is that this is a method of microdosing exercise, but very low, very low volume, high intensity microdoses of exercise. I mean, you're doing 4 seconds on a bike, just ramping it up there. So that is, that's what he's studying, is the effects of that. And doing that once an hour, every hour for an 8-hour workday. The most common reason people give for not performing physical activity or exercise is lack of time. We reasoned that one way to augment the effectiveness of exercise in a given time is to raise the intensity and perform it in an interval fashion. So high intensity interval training. Of course, the highest intensity is maximal or all-out exertion. Classic sprint interval training advocates multiple cycle bouts of 20 to 30 seconds, which causes extreme fatigue due to lactic acid accumulation and requires high levels of motivation. That's a good point there. We found that 5 sprints of only 4 seconds duration raises power production to levels 35% higher than sprint interval training and with little fatigue. So presumably it also takes less discipline or motivation. Let's see, when taking 45 seconds recovery in between these sprints, these 5 sprints could be comfortably performed in a 5-minute period. So you can do 5-minute intervals once an hour, which is what he's doing here. Using 5-minute intervals, and within that 5 minutes, you're going to do 4 4-second sprints. Okay, 4 to 5 4-second sprints. Let's see. Essentially, the subject pedals from 0 to around 160 repetitions per minute in approximately 4 seconds. So you're trying to ramp it up there really high, as fast as you can get. Accelerating a massive flywheel with maximal power identified. I believe this is kind of like a spin bike type thing. Thus, the person is maximally engaging or activating their motor units throughout the full range of the torque-force-velocity relationship. Basically, this means because you're on a flywheel, you're pushing all the way through that range of motion. I'm using my arms here, but we're talking about legs. Right? So his conclusion is the major health benefit of performing these 4-second sprints on an hourly basis was a 43% increase in fat oxidation and a 31% lowering of plasma triglyceride. Sorry, I'm just trying to restate this in a non-total scientific manner. Of the plasma triglyceride response, which just means lowering blood fats. Let's see, measured through the next day. So you're getting a residual effect through the next day. We don't know if this acute increase in fat oxidation with the sprint results in long-term whole body fat loss when regularly practiced, but presumably you could, versus nothing at least. Since these improvements were derived from only 160 seconds of non-fatiguing exercise per day, which means the 4-second sprints times 5 sprints per hour times 8 hours per day, it raises the question as to what is the least amount and type of exercise that can improve fat metabolism and other aspects of health during periods of prolonged activity. So this is what we refer to there's two concepts here. We're talking about microdosing, which is very small amounts of physical activity performed regularly throughout the day. The second thing we want to talk about is what he just mentioned here at the end, which is what is the minimal effective dose of any activity that will elicit the maximal effect of maximal gains. I like to say that you have a minimal effective dose and you have a maximal effective dose. The minimal effective is the lowest effect is going to give you what you want, and the maximal effect is how high does that dose go until you start seeing overtraining. All right, overtraining means unwanted soreness, other effects of overtraining that we can go over in another video. But so commenting on his technique, this is a lab technique, which means how practical is it to do in the in real life? If you're sitting there at home, during COVID right now, you're sitting at home, and is it practical to perform that? Let's say presumably that you have a bicycle ergometer, or maybe you do 10 seconds of hard jump rope or something like that. How could you mimic what he's come up with here and get great gains in metabolic? And what he's talking about here is metabolic gains. I think that there's great gains in terms of reversing the biomechanical effects of sitting as well. The effects of the tight hip flexors and the glutes that don't turn on and all that kind of stuff. So I think what he's talking about here in concept is great. The problem would be the pragmatism of it. Pragmatically, it's fairly difficult to get somebody. You have to have the personality type in order to implement this type of training to where somebody would be liable to get up from their desk and go do those sprints once an hour or once every 2 hours, or whatever we're going to dose somebody with in order to go do that. So the accountability becomes a bigger problem than the motivation. He talks about the motivation having to be low because the motivation in the exercise bout is fairly low. It's not that hard to do, but the accountability towards doing that, you're talking about doing 8 tasks as opposed to 1 task. So one workout takes very little accountability, but sometimes a high amount of motivation to get through the entire workout. This takes a low amount of motivation because you only have 4-second sprints times 5, 5-minute workouts, but you're doing it 8 times. So that's 8 workouts. That's a lot of accountability. So, I like what he says here. I love the effect of what he's talking about. I think it's fantastic technique. I promote microdosing very heavily, but we have to take into account personality variables and how somebody would implement this into their own day-by-day plan. And is somebody the type of personality, do they have the mental resources in order to do that? Some of us are more likely to do that, and a lot of us aren't. So we just got to figure that out for the individual. So thanks. That's the end of our recording today. So if you want to get a hold of me, then, the information is in the description. And I hope to talk to you soon.